In the heart of the Holy Roman Empire, the city of Strasbourg simmered under the weight of a long, cruel summer in the year of our Lord, 1518. Famine gnawed at the bellies of the poor, and the shadow of disease crept through the narrow, crowded streets. It was a time of fervent, almost frantic, piety, where the fear of God was as tangible as the cobblestones underfoot. In July 1518, a woman walked into the street and began to dance. Her name was Frau Troffea. She was not dancing for joy. There was no music, no festival, no celebration. Her face was a mask of grim determination, her body racked with spasms that threw her limbs in a grotesque parody of a jig. Her feet, clad in simple leather shoes, slapped against the dusty ground, a solitary, unnerving rhythm in the afternoon heat. At first, her neighbors watched with a mixture of pity and confusion. They offered her water, they begged her to rest. But she could not stop. Day bled into night, and night into the next day, and still, Frau Troffea danced. The sun beat down on her clothes became soaked with sweat, her face flushed and feverish. Yet, she danced on, her eyes wide and unfocused, lost in a trance that no one could penetrate. Exhaustion etched itself onto her features, but her legs refused to obey any command to cease their frantic motion. Fear began to curdle the air in Strasbourg. Whispers followed the relentless beat of her feet. Was it a divine punishment? A demonic possession? The town's physicians were summoned, but they merely shook their heads, muttering about hot blood and offering no cure. The priests prayed, but the dancing continued. The spectacle drew crowds. Merchants paused, their bartering forgotten. Peasants left their meager tasks to stare, their faces a mixture of awe and terror. The historical context of the time only fueled their anxieties. They had seen plague, they had known hunger, and they lived in a world where the supernatural felt perilously close. The line between heaven and hell was thin, and here, in the middle of their city, was a woman seemingly caught in a battle for her very soul. Then, the unthinkable happened. A man, watching from the edge of the crowd, began to twitch. His shoulders jerked, his feet shuffled. And then, as if pulled by an invisible string, he stumbled forward and joined Frau Troffea in her desperate, silent ballet. Soon after, a young woman followed, then another man, then a child. They were not dancing with each other, but alongside one another, each trapped in their own private agony. Within a week, dozens were dancing, and no one knew why. The week following Frau Troffea's first steps turned into a month of madness. The lone dancer was no longer alone. By the end of July, the streets of Strasbourg were a writhing, chaotic spectacle. Dozens, then scores, then hundreds of citizens were seized by the same uncontrollable urge to dance. Men, women, and children, from every walk of life, abandoned their homes, their jobs, their families. They poured into the public squares, their bodies jerking and twisting in a grotesque, unending ballet. Their movements were not joyful. This was not a festival. Faces were contorted in agony, sweat streamed down their bodies, and their eyes held a vacant, desperate stare. They danced through the heat of the day and the chill of the night. Their feet, raw and bleeding, stamped out a rhythm of pure suffering on the cobblestones. They were prisoners in their own bodies, puppets pulled by invisible, merciless strings. Sleep offered no escape. Exhaustion offered no rest. The city officials watched in horror as their community disintegrated. The normal sounds of urban life, the clang of the blacksmith's hammer, the chatter of the marketplace, the laughter of children, were replaced by a constant, unnerving symphony of shuffling feet, ragged breaths, and pained, guttural cries. Order was collapsing. Panic was a palpable entity, hanging thick in the summer air like a shroud. Something had to be done. Desperate for a solution, the city's leaders summoned the most learned men they could find, the physicians of the guild. After observing the afflicted, the doctors huddled together, poring over ancient texts and consulting the stars. Their diagnosis was as strange as the affliction itself. This was not a curse from heaven or a spell from hell, they declared. It was a natural illness, a physical malady caused by hot blood in the brain. Their reasoning was a product of their time. The body, they believed, was a vessel of humors. An imbalance could lead to all manner of sickness, both physical and mental. In this case, an excess of hot, agitated blood was overheating the brain, causing these manic, involuntary movements. The logic, however bizarre, was set, and their proposed cure would prove to be a catastrophic miscalculation. To expel the excess heat, the physicians prescribed a simple, yet terrifying, remedy. The afflicted must dance the fever out. They needed to keep moving, to sweat out the sickness until their bodies returned to a state of balance. The city officials, clinging to this sliver of medical authority, seized upon the recommendation. If the people had to dance, then the city would help them do it. And so began one of the most surreal chapters in medical history. The town council ordered the guild halls and open-air markets to be cleared. These spaces were to become designated dance floors, sanctuaries for the afflicted. But they didn't stop there. To encourage the non-stop movement, they hired musicians. Drummers and pipers were paid to provide a relentless, driving beat, a soundtrack to the spiraling insanity. A massive wooden stage was constructed in the center of the grain market. It stood as a monument to their flawed logic, a public theater for a private hell. Healthy dancers were even hired to join the crowd, to keep morale high and the tempo fast. The city's response to a plague of dancing was to organize a massive, city-wide dance marathon. They believed they were guiding their citizens back to health. In reality, they were orchestrating their demise. The scene was beyond nightmarish. On the newly built stage, under the relentless sun, hundreds of people danced. Their movements grew more frantic, fueled by the professional musicians whose melodies echoed through the terrified city. The music never stopped. The dancing never stopped. And soon, the dying began. One by one, they started to fall. The human body is not a perpetual motion machine. Hearts, pushed far beyond their limits, simply gave out. Strokes, brought on by extreme exertion and dehydration, felled others in an instant. Day after day, the death toll climbed. 15 people a day. Then 20. The stage built to cure them became their execution block. Men and women who had started dancing out of some unknown compulsion were now being actively encouraged to dance themselves to death, all in the name of medicine. The psychological toll was immense. For the dancers, it was a waking nightmare of pain and helplessness. For their families watching from the sidelines, it was an experience of profound, unbearable grief, seeing their loved ones literally dance into their graves. For the officials who had ordered it, a creeping dread must have set in as they witnessed the horrifying, fatal consequences of their decision. The very air of Strasbourg seemed to crackle with collective trauma. The city was having a nervous breakdown, broadcast live in its public squares. They had faced an inexplicable horror and, in their desperation to control it, to rationalize it, to cure it, they had amplified the suffering 100-fold. They had taken a bizarre, localized phenomenon and, through official policy, institutionalized it into a city-wide death sentence. The music played on, the bodies kept moving, and the city's heart kept breaking. The cure made it worse. What truly happened in Strasbourg during the summer of 1518? The city's desperate attempts to cure the dancing plague had failed. Building stages and bringing in musicians only seemed to encourage the bizarre affliction, turning a public health crisis into a macabre spectacle. The official chronicles tell us that the dancers were eventually moved out of the city, to shrines high in the Vosges Mountains, to pray for redemption from what was believed to be a divine curse. But what was the real cause behind this nightmarish dance marathon? How could dozens, then hundreds, of people dance themselves to exhaustion, injury, and in some cases, even death? To this day, the dancing plague remains one of history's most baffling medical mysteries. And the explanations are almost as strange as the event itself. Let's begin with the most widely accepted scientific theory, mass psychogenic illness, or as it's more commonly known, mass hysteria. Imagine a society pushed to its absolute limit. The people of Strasbourg in 1518 were not living in happy times. They faced rampant disease, widespread famine, and crippling poverty. A series of harsh winters and poor harvests had left many starving. Superstition was rife, and the fear of God's wrath, or demonic influence, was a part of daily life. The psychological pressure was immense, a powder keg of collective anxiety just waiting for a spark. That spark, historians argue, was Frau Troffea. When she stepped into the street and began her inexplicable dance, she may have triggered a chain reaction. Her distress resonated with her neighbors, who were already primed for a breakdown. In this view, the dancing wasn't a disease in the conventional sense, but a physical manifestation of extreme psychological stress, spreading through social contagion. It was a shared trance-like state, a desperate outlet for a community's unbearable suffering. Think of it like a contagion of the mind. Can fear become contagious? The evidence from Strasbourg suggests it can. Closely related to this is the idea of religious mania. In the deeply devout world of the 16th century, the line between spiritual ecstasy and psychological breakdown was often blurry. The dancers themselves reportedly cried out for help, claiming they were unwilling participants, compelled by a higher power. Some historical accounts mention Saint Vitus, a saint who, according to legend, could inflict a dancing curse upon sinners. Was it possible that the people of Strasbourg genuinely believed they had been cursed? In a world where divine intervention was an accepted fact, the belief in a curse could be powerful enough to create the physical symptoms. Their frantic movements might have been a desperate, public penance, a plea for forgiveness acted out in the city square. The dancing was not the disease, but a symptom of a profound spiritual and psychological crisis, rooted in the fervent religious beliefs of the era. The performance of suffering was a language everyone understood. But not all theories point to the mind. Some researchers propose a more tangible, biological culprit, ergotism. Ergot is a type of fungus that can grow on rye, a staple grain in 16th century Europe. When people eat bread made from ergot-contaminated rye, they can suffer from a condition called ergot poisoning. It has two forms. One causes gangrene, but the other, convulsive ergotism, attacks the central nervous system. The symptoms are terrifying: violent muscle spasms, twitching, delirium, and vivid hallucinations. It is not a great leap to imagine that these convulsive spasms could be misinterpreted as a form of dancing. The idea of an entire city, or at least a significant part of it, being slowly poisoned by their daily bread is a chilling one. It would explain the seemingly involuntary nature of the movements and the mental distress reported by the dancers. This theory suggests the cause wasn't in their heads, but in their stomachs, a hidden poison driving them to their frantic, fatal dance. However, this theory also has its weaknesses. Historians point out that ergotism typically doesn't cause the kind of coordinated, rhythmic dancing described in the Strasbourg Chronicles. The movements from ergot poisoning are usually more erratic and convulsive, not a sustained dance that could last for days. Furthermore, why would the poison affect people so selectively? It seems to have spread from person to person, like a contagion, rather than affecting everyone who ate from the same grain supply at the same time. While it's a compelling idea, the ergot theory doesn't quite fit all the bizarre facts of the case. The mystery deepens because each explanation seems to account for some aspects of the plague, but not all. The psychological theories explain the social spread, but not the incredible physical endurance. The poisoning theory explains the physical symptoms, but not the dance-like nature or the pattern of contagion. The city officials were baffled. Their initial response, to encourage more dancing, had been a catastrophic failure. The spectacle grew more grotesque by the day. The chronicles describe a scene of pure chaos: dancers with wild eyes, drenched in sweat, their feet bloody and torn, collapsing from sheer exhaustion, only to rise and dance again. The air was filled with a cacophony of music, shouts, and cries for mercy. The city's attempt to control the madness had only amplified it. As the death toll rose from heart attacks, strokes, and exhaustion, desperation set in. The authorities reversed their strategy. They banned all public dancing and music. The stages were torn down. The dancers were gathered up, forced onto wagons, and transported away from the city. They were taken to remote mountain shrines dedicated to Saint Vitus, where they were to pray and perform religious rituals, seeking a cure through divine intercession rather than public spectacle. And then, suddenly, it stopped. Just as mysteriously as it began, the dancing plague of 1518 faded away. By early September, the last of the dancers had ceased their frantic movements. The city of Strasbourg slowly returned to a state of normalcy, forever scarred by the memory of that terrifying summer. The question is, what finally ended it? Did the religious rituals at the shrines work? Did the isolation of the dancers break the chain of psychological contagion? Or did the community simply exhaust its capacity for hysteria? Perhaps the arrival of a new, uncontaminated grain harvest quietly ended a wave of ergot poisoning. We don't know for sure. The records are silent on the precise reasons for its conclusion. The plague simply vanished, leaving a legacy of fear and 1,000 unanswered questions. So, we are left with a series of compelling, yet incomplete, explanations. Was it a collective psychological break, a community's mind snapping under unbearable pressure? Was it an extreme form of religious fervor, a public display of penance and fear? Or was it the result of a hidden poison lurking in their food, driving them to madness? The truth is, it may have been a combination of all these factors. A perfect storm of famine, disease, stress, superstition, and perhaps even a biological trigger. Imagine a population already weakened by hunger and primed by fear, then exposed to a mind-altering substance. The result could be something as bizarre and terrifying as the dancing plague. The event serves as a chilling reminder of how vulnerable the human mind can be and how little we sometimes understand the powerful connection between our psychology and our physical bodies. It forces us to confront the reality that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the ones that live within our own societies and within our own minds. But none of these explanations fully solve the mystery. The year is 1518. The city of Strasbourg is in chaos. Hundreds of its citizens are caught in a relentless, feverish dance. They dance for days, for weeks, some until their bodies give out entirely. This was the dancing plague, a bizarre and terrifying chapter in history that saw ordinary people seemingly lose control of their minds and bodies. But what truly happened in the streets of Strasbourg? And what does this strange event tell us about the human mind? For centuries, the dancing plague remained a historical curiosity, a footnote in the annals of medieval Europe. Explanations ranged from the supernatural to the bizarre. Was it a curse? A strange new disease? Or perhaps, as some believed, the result of hot blood caused by an unusually warm summer? Early physicians, relying on the humoral theory of medicine, genuinely thought the dancers needed to sweat out their excess humors. So, they encouraged more dancing. They cleared out guild halls, brought in musicians, and even hired professional dancers to keep the afflicted moving. Their intentions may have been good, but their methods were deadly. The exhaustion, dehydration, and heart failure that followed claimed dozens of lives. But as our understanding of psychology and sociology has grown, a more complex and frankly, more unsettling picture has emerged. To understand the dancing plague, we can't just look at the dancers themselves. We must look at the world they lived in. Early 16th century Strasbourg was a city on the edge. Its people were grappling with immense hardship. Famine was rampant, with crop failures leading to widespread starvation. Disease was a constant threat, with new and terrifying illnesses like syphilis spreading across the continent. On top of this, a series of harsh winters and floods had devastated their livelihoods. This wasn't just physical hardship, it was a deep, collective trauma. The people of Strasbourg were living under a crushing weight of stress, fear, and hopelessness. Their world felt unpredictable and hostile. It's within this pressure cooker of anxiety that the first dancer, a woman known as Frau Trophia, stepped into the street and began to twirl. What started with one woman soon became a dozen, then 100. This is where the concept of mass psychogenic illness, or mass hysteria, comes into play. It's a phenomenon where physical symptoms, with no known organic cause, spread rapidly through a group of people. Think of it as a social contagion. The afflicted aren't faking it. Their symptoms are very real. Their bodies are physically manifesting the extreme psychological distress they're experiencing. In a society that lacked the language to talk about mental health or trauma, the body became the stage for a public outpouring of despair. The dancing itself might have been a form of trance-like state, a dissociative response to unbearable stress. When our minds can no longer cope with reality, they sometimes find ways to escape. For the people of Strasbourg, trapped in a world of suffering, this unconscious, collective dance may have been their only way out. Their shared belief system also played a crucial role. This was a deeply superstitious age. The fear of divine wrath and demonic possession was very real. Many believed they were being punished by Saint Vitus, a saint who, according to legend, could inflict a dancing curse. Once this idea took hold, it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. Fear of the curse made people more susceptible, and seeing others dance confirmed their deepest anxieties, creating a powerful feedback loop of panic and contagion. It's tempting to dismiss this as a relic of a distant, unenlightened past. But are we really so different today? Look at the way information and misinformation spreads like wildfire on social media. We've seen modern examples of social contagion, from viral challenges to financial market panics driven by collective fear and speculation. A single tweet or a video can spark a global reaction in minutes. While we may not be dancing in the streets, the underlying mechanisms are strikingly similar. A group of people, under a particular kind of stress, finds a shared outlet for their anxiety. The former takes changes with the times, but the core human psychology remains the same. The dancing plague is a powerful reminder that we are profoundly social creatures, deeply influenced by the beliefs and behaviors of those around us. Our minds are not isolated fortresses. They are porous, constantly shaped by the collective consciousness. The story of the dancing plague didn't end with the dancers collapsing. It faded away as the immediate crises in Strasbourg subsided. The harvest improved, the panic receded, and life slowly returned to a semblance of normality. The dancing stopped as mysteriously as it began, but its legacy endures. It serves as a stark warning about what can happen when a society is pushed to its breaking point. It highlights the profound connection between our mental and physical health, and how collective trauma can manifest in truly astonishing ways. It's a historical mirror, reflecting the vulnerabilities that still exist within our own modern, interconnected world. We may have traded saints and curses for online forums and trending topics, but our susceptibility to collective belief and emotional contagion hasn't vanished. The stage has changed, the costumes are different, but the actors are still us. The human psyche, with its depths of fear and its capacity for shared experience, continues to play out its dramas on the world stage. In the end, the dancing plague is more than just a bizarre historical anecdote. It's a window into the human condition. It reveals how fragile our sense of individual control can be in the face of overwhelming social and psychological pressure. It shows us that under the right conditions of stress, fear, and social influence, the most rational of us can be swept up in the most irrational of behaviors. It's a sobering lesson, etched into the cobblestones of a small European city 500 years ago, reminding us that the line between order and chaos, reason and hysteria, is thinner than we might like to believe. The story of Strasbourg is a story about the power of the mind, the danger of collective fear, and the desperate measures we take when faced with a world we can no longer comprehend. Sometimes history's strangest events tell us the most about ourselves.